Hello everyone, welcome to EduTap and welcome to Perspective 360 degree where we are going to do current affair based answer writing practice in a detailed and structured manner. And before we begin the session, I hope my voice is audible to all of you. Just confirm it in the chat box if the audio, video, everything is fine. Yes. All right. So thanks for the confirmation. So let us begin. So basically, as a part of today's session, we are going to discuss the recent change that the government has brought with respect to FDI rules, and this changes with respect to e-commerce companies, right? So the FDI policy that is there with respect to e-commerce companies, government has brought a significant change with respect to that. So we are going to discuss it, and we are also going to see that what type of question can be asked in the examination, and what we can write as a part of the answer to that question, right? So let us try to understand it one by one. So first of all, let us understand that what is the rule, what is the change that has been brought by the government. So what the government has announced, the government has decided to permit foreign direct investment in the inventory based e-commerce model, right? So basically it has permitted FDI in the inventory based e-commerce model. Now, before we understand these points and before we understand that what is the actual impact that is going to be with respect to these changes, we have to understand that what do we mean by inventory based model, right? Inventory based e-commerce model, and there is another model that is there which is marketplace model, right? So we will understand both these models one by one, then only we will be able to understand the impact of this change. So let us see what the change is, then we will enter the details. So the government had decided to permit FDI in the inventory based e-commerce model, but only when the goods are manufactured or produced in India, and those goods are sold exclusively outside India through exports, right? So that is the thing. So this relaxation does not permit foreign funded e-commerce companies to own inventory and sell it directly to consumers within India. So if you see this provision, what clearly you can think of, you can clearly see that basically the change has been brought in order to increase the exports, in order to increase the export competitiveness with respect to India. Right, we will understand the other impacts also, but this is the primary impact that is going to be there, right? Because earlier the thing was that we had not allowed this inventory based e-commerce model, because if this model was allowed, it would have given a lot of tough competition to the domestic manufacturers that are there, right? But now, even if this provision has been allowed, the government has added some clause to it. And what is that clause? The clause is that those goods should be manufactured or produced in India. That is the first thing that is going to improve the exports, right? And those goods, once you have purchased those goods, you have to sold them exclusively outside India through exports, right? Which means you are not going to sell them inside India. Otherwise, what will happen? The competition with respect to the domestic manufacturers, it is going to get increased, right? So that is the idea. So I hope it is clear to you. We will understand it later on also. But before that, let us try to understand some basic aspects with respect to the marketplace and inventory models. Now, first of all, if you talk about marketplace model is a model basically where the e-commerce company only provides a digital platform that connects sellers with buyers, and the platform normally does not own the products. What can be the example? A good example can be Amazon. Now, what Amazon does, we all know that. For example, if you are somebody who is person X and you want to sell electronics, right? You want to sell some electronics items. So what you're going to do, you are going to list your product over Amazon. And what the Amazon is going to do, Amazon is going to act as some kind of intermediator, right? And it will help you to sell this product to the customers, right? To the customers. We know that Amazon is a foreign company, right? So it was not allowed this inventory model, but this marketplace model is allowed, of course, which is the traditional e-commerce model. So where the e-commerce model is going to act as a digital platform, right? It is going to act as a digital platform over where it is going to enable these sellers to sell their products to the different consumers, right? To the different customers. This is what the marketplace model is in a very simple manner. On the other hand, if I talk about the inventory model, right, with respect to which the change has been brought, let me tell you that this, with respect to this marketplace model, the FDI was already allowed. So there is no change with respect to that because it was already existing. But regarding this inventory model, the FDI was not there. It was not allowed with respect to the foreign companies, right? So the point is that basically when we talk about inventory based model, in an inventory based model, the e-commerce company, what it does, it itself purchases, owns and stores the products, right? And what it does, it then sells those products directly to customers. What do I mean by that? A good example can be Nika. When we talk about Nika, the thing about Nika is that you must be knowing about Nika, right? So Nika basically sells the beauty products also, and I would say it also sells the fashion products. We all know that, right? You must have used this Nika app. Now, Nika is an Indian brand, right? Now, the point is that when we talk about the beauty and the personal care products that are sold by Nika, they are basically predominantly inventory-led model, right? They are run through inventory-led model. But on the other hand, if I talk about the fashion products, right, that is there, they are mainly sold with respect to the marketplace model. Right now, if you're wondering why Amazon was not allowed to go through this inventory model and why Nika is being allowed, the answer is that because Nika is an Indian company, it is not a foreign company, right? So the provision, the restriction that was there, it was with respect to the foreign company and not the Indian company, and that is a change that has been brought. But that even if the government has brought the significant change, it has these certain clauses attached to it, which means the goods should be product to manufactured in India, and those goods are sold exclusively outside through exports, right? Outside India through exports. So these are the two conditions that the government has added with respect to this inventory based e-commerce model. I hope the provision is clear to you. This is the only thing that I wanted you to understand, because rest of the things, the impact, also sort of thing, they're very general in nature and you will be able to understand it very easily, right? So let us talk about all those points, the significance, the challenges, all those points one by one. But before that, let us see the expected question from this topic. Okay, before we see the expected question, this is the comparison table just for your convenience. So if we talk about marketplace model, this is just a summary. We know that the owner of goods is going to be an independent seller. For example, I've already told you Amazon, right? But when we talk about inventory based model, so here I told you Nika, beauty products, beauty and personal care products, right? So over here, who is the owner? The owner can be e-commerce model. For example, what the Nika can do, Nika can purchase different lipsticks, right? Different lipsticks from different sellers, and then it can sell sell those lipsticks through its own from its own stores, right? What that is what it can do. So it is going to become what? Then it will become an inventory based model. I hope it is clear to you. So that is why this owner of the product is what? The owner of the product is the e-commerce company. If we talk about platform role, so over here, the Amazon, for example, it is going to act as an intermediary or a facilitator. But if we talk about the inventory based model, it is going to act as a retailer, right? It is going to purchase it, then it is going to sell it to the customers. Then the pricing control mainly by seller, right? The person who is selling these different entities, different, I would say, goods or products. But in the inventory based model, it is going to be the inventory owner, right? If you talk about revenue, it can be earned through commission, listing, advertising fees that can be there. That's how basically Amazon, Flipkart, all these companies work. But if we talk about inventory based model, it is profit margin on direct sale, right? If we talk about inventory risk, then seller bears the risk, but in this case, platform bears the risk, right? So this is the difference between marketplace model and inventory based model. I hope now it is clear to you with the help of examples. Now let us move on to the question that can be expected from this topic, that examine the significance and key challenges of permitting FDI in the inventory based e-commerce model exclusively for exports of domestically manufactured goods, right? So even if I've written this question for 600 word 15 marks, nowadays you would have seen the recent examination, right? Phase 2 examination, that RBI pattern has got a bit changed. They are now asking you 7.5 marker question also, 5 marker question also, right? So you can expect such minor current affair topics also, right? Although they seem to be minor, but they have heavy impact when it comes to the FDI policy, right? So you can expect such kind of small topics in a 7.5 marker or as a 5 marker questions also, right? But anyways, we are going to cover it in a detailed manner as a 15 marker question. So let us see. So this is how you're going to write your answer, by dividing it into introduction, body and conclusion. Introduction has to be written within 10 to 12% of the total word limit. The same rule is for the conclusion, and rest of the word limit shall be dedicated to the body part, where you're going to write your body with the help of different headings, subheadings, right, in the form of bullet points. I hope it is clear to you. So this is going to be the introduction to our answer that e-commerce enables domestic producers to access international consumers without establishing physical retail networks abroad. However, India's FDI policy has traditionally distinguished between the marketplace model, where the platform facilitates transactions between buyers and sellers, and the inventory-based model, where e-commerce entity owns the good and sells them directly. Right? So, such sort of small introduction you can give. Now, if we talk about the body part, right? If we talk about the body, let us talk about the first thing, which is what has changed, right? So this is something that I've already told you because the question is very specifically asking you that you have to write the significance and key challenges of permitting FDI in the inventory based e-commerce model. So basically the examiner is expecting you that you're going to write those points that are related to this significant change that has happened. So first of all, you're going to talk about that, right? So under the earlier framework, FDI backed e-commerce entities, they could operate in B2B model, right? Business to business model that is there, and marketplace models, right? While the inventory based model, it remained restricted. But the newly proposed decision, what it has done, it has permitted an e-commerce entity to undertake the inventory-based model exclusively when the goods are manufactured and produced in India, and such goods are sold exclusively outside India through exports, right? So that is the key point that you need to remember. Now, next let us talk about the significance of the reform. And the first significance is greater access to global market. Now, this is a very easier point, right? Basically, earlier, a small Indian producer, it had to independently buy foreign buyers, right? It had to independently find the foreign buyers, right? And it had to arrange the export documents, right? Also sort of things were there, right? The, challenges related to packaging, challenges related to delivery. But now under this new framework, what the e-commerce company can do, it can very easily, it can purchase the goods from the producer, it can store them in the warehouse, and it can list them over the international platform, right? And what is going to help, it is going to help them in packaging also, shipping also sort of things. So everything is going to get standardized, right? So that is how the Indian producer, what it can do, it can reach the foreign customers without creating its own international sales network. That is the best part about it. So imagine the Indian producers that are there, the ease with which they will be able to have access to the global markets, the international markets. That is the best part about it, right? So if we talk, if I read the lines for you, an inventory owning exporter, right? Or you can say exporter or a small producer that is there, it can procure goods, it can maintain stocks, it can standardize product quality, it can manage packaging and fulfill overseas orders quickly, right? By becoming a part of the international sales network with the help of the e-commerce platforms, right? So that is the point. The second benefit, so this can help provide Indian sellers with better access to global consumers, right? Now let us move on to second point. The second point is support for MSMEs and artisans, right? Now the point is that the small businesses and artisans that are there, they may manufacture good products, right? No doubt regarding that, they may manufacture good products or the quality products, but the point is that they still face different sort of challenges. What type of challenges? For example, I would say international marketing knowledge that is there, that could be one point. Apart from that, I would say the export documentation expertise that is required, right? That can be another challenge that can be faced by this MSME or this artisans. Apart from that, you can say the warehouses, the foreign payment systems, also sort of things, right? Different sort of challenges are there. But with the help of this reform, what is going to happen, they are going to get the support, right? They are going to support, and these, because what will happen now, these MSMEs, instead of directly selling their product, they can sell their product to the e-commerce platform, right? And e-commerce platform is going to manage all these different type of activities on the behalf of this MSMEs or on the behalf of this artisans, right? So that is how their job is going to become easier. So if I read it for you, small producers often lack international marketing, warehousing, payment processing, and returns management capabilities, right? And export-oriented e-commerce activities can aggregate their products and can provide end-to-end export support, right? And now DGFT, which means Director General of Foreign Trade, for foreign trade, is also piloting e-commerce export hubs to assist MSMEs and artisans through simplified logistics, customer clearances, and return management. So we are creating these export hubs also, so that basically there is more and more ease of doing business with respect to these different entities like MSMEs, small producers, small businessmen, right? So that they can basically get the clearances easily and they can export their products with lesser hurdles. Now the third point. The third point is promotion of domestic manufacturing. So of course, this is a very obvious point if you keep in mind the first and the second point, right? Because this, if you talk about the relaxation, this relaxation, it applies to uh, those goods only, right? It applies to goods that are manufactured in India only or produced in India only, right? So of course, because of this, what is going to happen? The domestic manufacturing, it is going to get promoted. So for example, one way could be that if this e-commerce X platform is there, what it can do, it can buy the products from the small producer, right? Maybe at a lesser price, right? Because let us say if there is very less competition in the market, X, Y, and A, these are the big sharks, big e-commerce entities that are there. So what they can do, they can basically purchase it from the small producer at a lesser price, and then they can sell it to the Indian consumers only. Don't you think it is going to kill the competition in the market? The answer is yes. Don't you think it is going to impact the interest of the domestic manufacturers? The answer is yes, right? So in order to avoid this kind of scenario, that is the reason why what the government is saying. The government is saying that if you're buying it from here, the goods that are manufactured in India, you have to sell it abroad so that exports can get improved, right? So this is going to hugely promote the domestic manufacturing in India. So if I read it for you, since the relaxation applies only to goods manufactured or produced in India, foreign capital, technology, and global supply chain expertise, it may generate additional demand of Indian production, employment, and domestic value addition, right? So this is going to be another significance of that. Point number 4 is with respect to export diversification, right? So basically this is a very obvious point because basically Indian exports, when we talk about Indian exports, usually we talk about what? We talk about petroleum products, or we talk about engineering goods, or we talk about chemicals or pharmaceuticals, but usually we do not talk about the e-commerce platforms that are there. But now what is going to happen with the help of this, our exports are going to get boost, right? And different sort of Indian products, they are going to get the international exposure. For example, it can include the handicraft, it can include the clothing, textile, jewelry, different type of packaged and the processed food that is there, right? Also sort of, I would say, promotion, the exposure is going to happen as a result of it, right? So this can be another very valuable impact that could be there as a part of this amendment that has happened to this rule, right? So if I read it for you, the reform can support export of products suitable for small value online orders such as handicraft, textile, jewelry, processed food, beauty and wellness products, leather and lifestyle goods, right? Different sort of goods that are there. And if I show you some data, then let me tell you that the official release of Foreign Trade Policy 2023 noted estimates placing India's e-commerce export potential at US$ 200 to 300 billion by 2030. So this is the data that you can remember with respect to this topic, right? Which is nothing but the India's e-commerce export potential, right? As mentioned in the Foreign Trade Policy 2023, and India's merchandise export, which means the goods export that is there, right? Excluding services. So India's merchandise export stood at approximately US$ 441.73 billion during 2025 to 26, which indicates the considerable supplementary role that cross-border e-commerce can play, right? So I hope it is clear to you. Now let us talk about key implementation challenges that are there. So multiple challenges can be there. For example, one of the challenges can be regulatory leakage, right? So authorities must ensure that the inventory designated for export is not delivered to domestic retail market. ये वही कहानी होगी जो मैंने अभी आपको 2 मिनट पहले बताई थी. What the e-commerce platforms can do, मान लो ये Flipkart है, right? This is Amazon. This is another big company, e-commerce company that is there. What they can do, they can buy the products from the domestic producers at a less price because of less competition in the market, right? And what they can do, they can sell it at the heavy price to the, let us say, Indian customers only, right? So do you think it is going to boost the exports? The answer is no, right? It is not going to have any significant impact with respect to the Indian economy or the Indian export potential that is there, right? So that is why this is something that shall be avoided. So in order to ensure that this does not happen, the regulatory authorities, they need to assure that there is full accountability and supervisory measures shall be taken in this direction, right? So that is the point. Then verification of Indian origin. Now what we are doing, we know that the Indian producers, they are going to sell their products to this e-commerce platform, who are further on going to sell it to the different countries. Now it is very important that we are able to make sure that whatever products they are selling, they are basically actually Indian origin, right? They are not fake products, right? So we have to make sure that we are providing effective checks, right, to prevent imported goods from being merely repackaged or minimally processed and subsequently processed at presented as domestically manufactured goods. For example, क्या हो सकता है, मान लो ये बोल तो रही है e-commerce companies that we have taken this product from India, but background में ये product चाइना से आ रहा है, राइट और इंडिया में बस उसकी रीपैकेजिंग हो रही है या फिर छोटी मोटी वैल्यू एडिशन कर दी और नाम ले रहे हैं इंडिया का कि देखो हम इंडिया से लाए हैं, एंड दैट इज हाउ दे आर गेटिंग बेनिफिटेड, राइट? सो दिस हैज टू बी अवॉइडेड. We have to make sure that if the product is being exported, basically it is of Indian origin. Then market concentration. So large foreign funded platforms, they may acquire substantial bargaining power over small suppliers, potentially resulting in unfair procurement prices or restricted contractual conditions, right? Because what the large foreign funded platforms they can do, what large e-commerce platform they can do, they may purchase products from thousands of small manufacturers, and due to their size, what they can do, they may gain greater negotiating power, right? That can basically impact the interest of the small players that are there in the market, right? So that has to be avoided, right? So this is another key implementation challenge that is there, which is the market concentration just in the hands of few companies, right, or few individuals. Then complex compliance. Business must comply with custom procedures, foreign exchange realization requirement, taxation rules, overseas product standards, and consumer protection regulations, right? These are the things again that we have to make sure that these rules are followed by e-commerce platforms in the best possible manner. Then reverse and reverse logistics. Ab dekho, the point is that, for example, if the producer has sold the product to the e-commerce company, now the e-commerce company is selling it to different countries. Now, let us say if the product has to be returned, right? So there has to be complete policy regarding the returns of the logistics also, right? So the cross-border e-commerce frequently involves rejected or returned goods, delay in re-import, and custom clearances can significantly increase cost for exporters, right? So we have to make sure that this cost does not get increased drastically, right? So that is again another point that has to be considered. Now, lastly, we have the conclusion part. So the e-commerce platform is not this reform regarding e-commerce industry is not a general opening of inventory based e-commerce to foreign investment. It is narrowly designed export facilitation measure linked to domestically manufactured products with effective origin verification, digital monitoring, MSME safeguards, and coordination among DPIIT, DGFT, customs, and RBI. The policy can attract foreign capital by strengthening make in India, employment generation, and export led growth, right? So this sort of conclusion, of course, you can write in your own language. So I hope it is clear to you. So what we have covered today, if we summarize it, first of all, we have seen that what is the difference between marketplace model and inventory based model. In marketplace model, I have given you basically the example of Amazon, right, where a certain type of e-commerce platform, it can act as an intermediary, and it can basically help the sellers to sell their products. But in the inventory platform, what is happening, they are basically purchasing the products from different producers or different sellers, and then this e-commerce platform is going to sell it to the different customers, right? So that is the thing that we have understood. Then we have seen the significance of this change in the policy, and apart from that, we have seen the challenges with respect to implementation also, right? So I hope the crux is clear to you, and I hope the session was helpful. And this is the question, the answer for which you have to write it in the comment box, right? So now we are done. Let me see if you have any questions or any doubts. All right. So now I'm ending the session, and thank you so much and all the best.